Dark Inheritance. Dark Inheritance Chapter 1, Inheritance January 13, 2026 2:14 a.m. Crescent City, the phone buzzed against the scarred coffee table like a dying insect. Jessica Hale let it vibrate 3 full cycles before she reached for it. Neon from the street bled through half-broken blinds, turning floating dust into tiny falling stars. Somewhere in the next room, Zach snored softly, or pretended to. She thumbed the answer button. "Miss Hale." The voice was male, calm in the practiced way people get when they deliver bad news for money. "This is Marcus Lang from Blackwood Estate Legal Services. I regret to inform you that your foster parents were found deceased at their residence approximately 43 minutes ago." Jessica closed her eyes. She already knew. Billionaires didn't die quietly. Not the ones who bought senators the way other men bought groceries. Not the ones who'd adopted 2 feral 5-year-olds and raised them behind blast-proof gates and armed patrols. How, she asked anyway. A pause, papers shifting. Officially a gas leak. She barked a single laugh, sharp, wrong, like glass breaking underwater. Zach was in the doorway now, shirtless. Scars pale against his chest like old lightning. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. He just looked at her face and knew something ancient had finally come to collect. They drove through the night in silence. The city smelled of wet asphalt and distant gunfire. No one spoke until the gates of Blackwood Estate slid open on silent rails. No police tape. No flashing lights. No crowd. Just private security posted at intervals, eyes carefully averted, like mourners who'd been instructed not to recognize grief. Inside, the mansion was immaculate, too immaculate. Marble floors gleamed under soft recessed lighting. Furniture untouched. The West Wing, where their foster parents had spent most of their final years, looked staged, like a museum exhibit titled Normal Life. "Where are they?" Zach asked quietly. "Removed," the lead guard answered, "for processing." Jessica felt ice crawl up her spine. Zach noticed what the cleaners missed. Dust didn't settle naturally near the fireplace. It had been disturbed, dragged, scuffed. Beneath the smear, a seam in the stonework that didn't belong. He pressed his palm against it. The wall slid back with a low mechanical sigh. Hidden lights snapped on beneath the earth, harsh and white, revealing a stairwell that sank into the ground like a wound. Jessica whispered, "They never told us about this." "They never told us a lot," Zach said. The staircase ended in something between a bunker and a shrine. Weapon racks lined the walls, rifles without serials, pistols still warm from testing, prototypes that looked designed by people who'd given up on restraint. Crates of ammunition stacked like offerings. Workbenches cluttered with schematics, half-built machines, fingerprints burned into metal where gloves had been torn away. The smell was stronger down here. Oil, ozone, old blood. At the center of it all sat 2 wristbands. Black metal, seamless, veined with faint blue light that pulsed slowly, deliberately, like something breathing. A terminal flickered on as they approached. "Project Aegis. Status complete." Jessica's voice barely carried. What did they build? The answer came without words. 1 wristband activated. Metal unfolded from nothing. Energy hardened into shape. In under a second, a full suit of power armor stood before them, angular, predatory, built not to protect but to dominate. Zach felt his pulse slow instead of race. Whatever killed, their parents hadn't taken this. Which meant whoever did it either couldn't, or didn't need to. Miles away, in a house that never stopped humming, Walter Dorn sat barefoot among his hives. Bees crawled across his arms, his face, his closed eyelids. "They're gone now," he murmured. The bees hummed in reply. "Which means the city is finally mine." Chapter 2, The Wasp. Walter Dorn's house squatted at the edge of the industrial ward, gray wood peeling like dead skin. Inside, the air was warm and thick, heavy with rot, honey, and chemicals that burned the sinuses if you breathed too deep. Every surface crawled. The walls, the ceiling, the floors. Bees. Thousands of them. They clung to the rafters in pulsing masses, shifting like a single organism. They nested in the walls, in the vents, in the hollowed-out furniture. Some crawled freely across the floor, crunching softly under bare feet that didn't flinch. Walter sat in the center of the living room on a chair missing one leg, balanced perfectly despite the tilt. He was shirtless. Thin, pale, his ribs showed when he breathed. Bees crawled across his skin. They coated his arms first, then his chest, then his neck and face, layering themselves over him in a living shroud. When one stung him, he didn't react. No flinch, no hiss of pain, just a slow exhale through his nose. Armor, he thought. Living, obedient armor. Easy, he murmured. The bees shifted, responding to the vibration of his voice more than the word itself. They tightened, overlapping their bodies, their wings locking together. Where bare skin had been, there was now movement, protection. Walter stood. The bees moved with him. He walked to the far room, what used to be his father's bedroom. The bed was still there, warped and sagging, sheets permanently stained dark with age and something worse. Walter never cleaned this room. He never needed to. This was where it had happened. He remembered the night perfectly. The shouting, the smell of sweat and whiskey, the sound of glass breaking against the wall just inches from his head. His father's face red and twisted, spittle flying, as he screamed about worthless sons and ungrateful mouths. The hives had already been humming back then. Walter had been 14 when the sting happened. A single bee, wrong place, wrong time, or maybe exactly the right one. It had stung him on the neck while he was cleaning the hives, the pain sharp and electric. He remembered collapsing, body convulsing as the chemicals seeped in. Not poison, something else. Something the barrels buried behind the house had leaked into the soil years ago. That night, lying on the floor, he heard them. Not buzzing speaking, not words intention, direction, unity. When his father finally passed out on the bed, snoring like an animal, Walter stood in the doorway and whispered for the first time. "Come here." The bees had obeyed. By morning, the house was quiet. Walter smiled now as he looked at the bed. "Still justified," he said softly. The bees hummed in agreement. He dressed carefully, black slacks, white shirt, a jacket that hid the faint movement beneath the fabric. The bees thinned as he layered clothes over them, retreating into the seams, the cuffs, the collar. Only a few remained visible, crawling across his knuckles like rings. He stepped into the garage, where the real work waited. Blueprints covered the walls, sleek, brutal designs sketched in obsessive detail. Boots reinforced with shock capacitors. Impact plates calibrated to deliver lethal current on contact. Sting like a wasp. His friend had built the first prototype weeks ago, hands shaking with excitement and something darker. The man understood him, understood necessity, understood that cities didn't rot by accident, they were allowed to. Walter slid the boots on. They fit perfectly. He stomped once. The concrete cracked. "Soon," he whispered. Outside, the city groaned under its own corruption. Sirens, gunshots, deals made in shadows, a place begging for control. Walter straightened his jacket, bees tightening beneath it like muscle. "They want a savior," he said. The bees stirred. "I'll give them a god." Chapter 3. The savior of Rot. Walter Dorn smiled the way men learned to smile when they practiced it in mirrors. Warm, earnest, slightly tired, the smile of someone who had seen things and carried them for others. The cameras loved him. "People are hurting," Walter said, standing beneath the campaign banner that read clean HANDS. Clean city. "And they're tired of being told corruption is inevitable. I don't believe that. I believe order is possible." Applause thundered through the auditorium. Mothers nodded, workers clapped. Men who'd been robbed twice this year leaned forward like he was speaking directly to them. No bees crawled on him now, none visible at least. Just a crisp suit, a clean shave, and eyes that shone with something that could pass for conviction. Across town, polls refreshed on glowing screens. Walter Dorn, second place still trailing. "Control is mercy," his father's voice echoed, uninvited. Walter remembered being 8, standing in the hive shed with honey dripping down his wrists, his hands aching from stings. "You let things go," his father had snarled, yanking his arm hard enough to bruise. "And rot spreads. People need to be handled, ruled, otherwise they turn feral." A slap, a correction. You remember that boy. Walter had remembered. He remembered it every time someone told him he was too intense. Every time donors smiled politely and backed the other candidate. Every time the city chose chaos over clarity. His opponent's name was Daniel Cross. Career politician, clean record, no scandals. The kind of man who made corruption look like a rumor instead of a disease. He was the favorite because he was safe. That was the problem. Walter stood alone in the green room after the debate, watching Cross laugh with reporters on the monitor. The man's tie was crooked, his guard was down. Walter closed his eyes. Come. The bees answered. The night Daniel Cross died, the city was asleep. His home security system never triggered. His windows stayed intact. His wife slept through it all. The bees entered through the vents. They filled his lungs before he woke fully, crawled into his mouth, his nose, his throat. Panic seized him for exactly 8 seconds before the venom shut everything down. By morning, the coroner would call it an allergic reaction. By noon, the news would call it tragic. By nightfall, the city would be praying for someone strong enough to fix things. Walter stood at the podium the next day, eyes downcast, voice trembling just enough. This city lost a good man, he said, and I wish truly that this election could end without blood on its hands. People cried. They didn't see the bees clustering thick in the trees outside. They didn't hear the hum beneath his words. Poll numbers surged. Memorials sprang up overnight. Candles, signs, photos of Walter beside crosses, halos accidentally formed by streetlights in viral images. Chosen. Protected. He was spared for a reason. Walter read every one. Jessica and Zach watched from the backseat of a town car, the city sliding by like a wound that refused to scab. The television embedded in the divider played the coverage on mute. Walter's face filled the screen, calm, sorrowful, inevitable. People are eating this up, Zach muttered. Jessica didn't answer right away. She watched Walter's eyes, the way they didn't quite match the grief on his face. He believes it, she said finally. Believes what? That he's necessary. The car slowed as they approached the law offices downtown. Polished glass, armed guards, a place where power changed hands quietly. The screen flashed breaking news again. Uncontested candidate election, expected to swing tonight. Zach clenched his jaw. Whatever's coming, he said, it's not politics. Jessica's wristband felt heavier than it had that morning. Somewhere in the city, bees filled the air like a hymn. And the city, desperate and diseased, began to choose its god. Chapter 4, Terms and Conditions. The law office didn't feel like justice. It felt like money. Polished stone floors. Bulletproof glass disguised as modern art. Armed guards who didn't pretend not to stare at the 2 teenagers who suddenly owned more wealth than entire neighborhoods. Jessica sat stiffly in the leather chair, hands folded tight in her lap. Zach leaned back, arms crossed, eyes roaming the room like he expected it to bite. The lawyer was older, expensive gray suit, voice trained to sound sympathetic without actually being it. First, he said, sliding a tablet across the table, I want to say how deeply sorry we all are for your loss. Jessica nodded, Zach didn't. Your foster parents, the lawyer continued, left very explicit instructions regarding their estate. Financial assets, properties, shell corporations, those will transfer to you both immediately upon signature. Shell corporations, Zach asked. The lawyer paused, smiled thinly. You'll receive a list. Jessica swallowed, and the other things. The lawyer's smile vanished. He tapped the tablet. A secure file opened. Project Aegis. You were never meant to see this yet, he said carefully, but circumstances changed. Zach leaned forward now. Our parents were defense contractors, the lawyer said. Unofficially, the suits beneath the mansion were prototypes intended for sale to a private military consortium. International buyers, the kind with no flags. Jessica felt sick. They were going to sell them. Yes, for an amount I doubt you could easily conceptualize. Zach laughed once, bitter. So they weren't heroes, they were arms dealers. They were realists, the lawyer corrected. They believed governments were already obsolete. Silence settled heavy. Jessica's voice was quiet, and now. The lawyer slid two small black cases onto the table. Now, he said, they belong to you. They didn't speak when they left. The city greeted them with noise, sirens, shouting, a helicopter thudding overhead like a pulse. As they crossed the street, something slammed into a parked car down the block. A scream followed. Zach stopped. Jessica turned just in time to see a man drag a woman by the hair out of a convenience store. Blood streamed down her face. The man was laughing. Two others followed, one waving a gun, the other filming on his phone. No police. No intervention. Just people watching from behind glass. Jesus, Zach muttered. The woman screamed again, a sound that cut straight through Jessica's chest. Her wristband buzzed. Soft, almost curious. Did you feel that? She asked. Zach looked down at his own. Yeah. They stood there, frozen, as the man raised the gun and struck the woman across the face. Jessica snapped. We can stop this. Zach stared at her, with what, a lawsuit? She grabbed his wrist and held it up between them. With these. Zach shook his head. Those things are military weapons, you heard the lawyer. This is how you get killed, or worse. Jessica's voice cracked. And what happens if we don't? Another scream. The man cocked the gun. Zach looked around. Still no sirens, still no cops. He exhaled slowly. Our parents built these to sell control. Jessica met his eyes. Then we don't sell them. The wristband on Zach's arm pulsed brighter. We use them, she said, just this once, to stop something we can actually see. Zach hesitated. Then nodded. Just this once. They ducked into the alley. Jessica's hands shook. As she pressed the activation sequence, the lawyer had warned them not to touch. The air around her wrist collapsed inward. Metal unfolded. Energy snapped into place. The suit wrapped around her in a second, sealing with a sound like a coffin closing. Zach's followed. The suits felt heavy, not physically, mentally, like wearing intent. They stepped back onto the street. The man with the gun turned first. Zach didn't let him finish. He crossed the distance in 3 steps and slammed into the gunman, driving him back against the wall. The impact was brutal. Ribs cracked audibly. The man's breath exploded out of him in a wet gasp, and he slid down the brick, unconscious, blood trickling from his mouth. The other 2 ran. Jessica caught one by the collar and threw him into the alley wall. He hit hard, head snapping back, body slumping in a heap, dazed and bleeding from a split scalp. The woman collapsed, sobbing. Zach stood over the gunman, breathing hard, gauntlets still clenched. No killing, Jessica said, voice shaking but firm. Zach nodded, stepped back. Sirens finally sounded in the distance, late, as always. They vanished before the lights arrived. Back in the car, neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Zach said, that wasn't a test run. Jessica stared at her reflection in the dark glass. The suit still hummed faintly beneath her clothes. No, she said, that was a decision. Somewhere above them, a campaign billboard flickered to life. WLTERDORNE, a new order the city was choosing its god. And somewhere beneath it, 2 weapons had just chosen their targets. Chapter 5, Shadows in Motion. The city smelled of wet asphalt and smoke. Sirens wailed somewhere distant, late but inevitable. Jessica's suit hummed faintly beneath her skin, a low, tense pulse reminding her of the fight they had just survived. Zach didn't speak. He hadn't since the alley. The gunman's blood was still on his gauntlets when they deactivated the suits. Jessica's voice trembled. Zach, he's alive, Zach said flatly. Broken ribs, concussion, he'll live. Jessica swallowed. We didn't, Zach interrupted. We stopped him, that's enough. Several blocks away, Detective Elias Kane crouched beside the unconscious gunman. He'd been called in for an assault report, but the scene unsettled him. The injuries were precise, clean, almost surgical. The gunman's phone was still clutched in his hand, recording something Kane couldn't see. The alley smelled of ozone and burned asphalt. Something in the scene didn't feel random. This city, Kane muttered. How does this happen and no one's around? He scribbled in his notebook, trying to make sense of it. Another alley, another incident. Different circumstances, same result, brutality that didn't add up. Kane was beginning to see a pattern, but he didn't yet know it was intentional. Back at the mansion, Jessica and Zach were in the bunker beneath the house, reviewing the suits. "They're not meant for us," Jessica said. "They were going to sell them to a private military group. That's what the lawyer said." Zach ran a hand over the smooth metal. "Yeah, deadly, precise, and now, we own them." Jessica's eyes darkened. "And if we do nothing?" Zach's jaw tightened. "Then the city keeps bleeding." Jessica swallowed. "Then we fight tonight." Meanwhile, the city buzzed with political news. Walter Dorn smiled on screens everywhere, speaking of hope and order, his poll numbers climbing despite his opponent already being dead. The public didn't know that Daniel Cross's tragic accident had cleared the way. Walter's speeches were flawless. Calm, measured, savior-like, cameras captured his every movement. People believed him, they had to. But behind the scenes, the hives hummed. The swarm shifted in response to his commands. Memories of his father whispered, "Control or be destroyed by chaos." Walter didn't panic. The city would fall into line soon. The people were ready to kneel. That night, Jessica and Zach suited up again. They didn't know it yet, but a detective was noticing a string of violent incidents, brutal, precise, seemingly random. Kane lit a cigarette in his car, staring at another alley where a gang had been intercepted in the middle of a robbery. Evidence pointed to someone with extraordinary skill. He didn't know what he was chasing, only that the city was bleeding in ways he couldn't yet control. Chapter 6. Election Day shadows. The city streets were thick with anticipation. Billboards lit the skyline with Walter Dorn's calm, smiling face. A new order for Crescent City. Flags hung limp from cracked lampposts. Horns blared. Vendors shouted promises and lies. People moved like ants along the sidewalks, eyes glued to every screen. Jessica and Zach moved differently. Hidden in the shadows, the suits cloaked their presence, hum of energy masking footfalls. The city smelled of gasoline, wet concrete, and something rotten underneath, the kind of rot that waited for someone strong enough to intervene. It happened in a narrow alley near the train station. A man pulled a knife on a teenage boy trying to escape a mugging. The woman behind him screamed. Zach froze for a heartbeat. Jessica's suit flared with energy. "Do nothing," she hissed. Zach shook his head, jaw tight. "We can't, he'll kill him." Metal snapped around them both as they deployed the suits. Shadows folded into light. Energy hardened into deadly precision. Zach moved first, striking the mugger across the chest. The man's body crumpled, and for a heartbeat, everything stopped. Jessica exhaled, helping the teen to his feet. "We saved him," she said. Zach didn't answer. His eyes were dark, fixed on the fallen man. "You killed him," Jessica said quietly. "He would have killed him," Zach shot back, voice low but fierce. "I didn't murder, I stopped death." "By killing him," she pressed, That still murder, Zach." Zach's fists clenched. "Justice isn't always neat. You saw what would have happened. That's all that matters." Jessica shook her head. "Do we get to decide who lives, who dies?" Zach stepped closer, towering even in the suit. "We already decided when we put these on. Don't pretend you didn't feel it. The city's killing people every day, we just finally hit back." She swallowed hard. "I know, her voice broke. "I don't want us to become the monsters we're trying to stop." Zach softened slightly. "We won't, not if we remember why we do it, not if we never forget her face." From a nearby rooftop, Kane watched. He hadn't been called in yet. He was supposed to support the police, support the law, and he still supported Walter Dorn. A clean sweep, a savior for the city, he thought. But now he saw something impossible. Two teenagers, glowing suits of energy, moving faster than human reflexes, striking a man and leaving him dead. Kane's brow furrowed. He scribbled in his notebook. This wasn't random violence, not ordinary, not natural. His gut twisted as he followed the faint blue traces the suits left in the night. He didn't know who they were or why, but he felt it. Something big was happening, and he was too late. Back in the alley, Jessica checked the teen, making sure he was okay. Zach bent over the body of the mugger, looking at it with strange detachment. We can't stay here, Jessica said. Zach nodded. We go back, get ready. Election results tonight. The city's about to choose its god. Jessica's eyes softened for a moment. I just hope we're not creating a god ourselves. Zach glanced at her, voice firm but low. If we are, at least it'll be one that knows the difference between murder and justice. Kane left the scene slowly, notebook in hand. He didn't know where to start yet, only that the city was moving faster than the police. And somewhere, hidden, there was a lead he would follow, a slip in their pattern that would eventually point him to the mansion. Tonight, he still supported Walter. But after tonight, everything would begin to shift. Chapter 7, Nightfall at the mansion. The mansion was quiet, but not peaceful. Jessica and Zach stomped through the grand hall, arguing in low, sharp bursts. The hum of the suits beneath their clothes was almost a heartbeat, synchronizing with the tension in the air. You can't just decide who lives and dies, Zach. Jessica spat as she flung open her bedroom door. Zach followed, hands trembling slightly. And you think waiting does any good? You think letting them rot, letting the city eat itself alive is justice? You're making yourself a judge, jury, and executioner. Zach's jaw tightened. Maybe that's what it takes in a city like this. The house staff, gliding silently through the halls, didn't look up. A butler polished silver by the dining table. Security guards watched the perimeter monitors, expressionless. Their eyes skimmed over the argument like they always had, ever since the kids' foster parents had bickered, ever since the mansion had been a house of wealth and control. Jessica slammed her door, breathing hard. Zach retreated to the library, letting the silence of the room swallow him. They lay in their separate bedrooms that night, suits deactivated, hearts still thrumming with adrenaline. Neither slept. Both wrestled with what they had done. Elsewhere, the city's other puppet master was spiraling. Walter Dorn's house reeked of honey, chemicals, and whiskey. Bees crawled over the walls, down the counters, across the floors, forming thick living patterns that followed his gestures. He was barefoot, jacket undone, face pale but alive with manic energy. His friend, the engineer who understood him, sat opposite, tinkering with a new prototype boot. A whiskey bottle between them. Smiles like predators. They're so gullible, Walter said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Look at them, waiting for a savior, hoping someone's going to fix it, and they'll cheer for whoever promises it. The engineer chuckled. Like sheep, Walter, and you're the shepherd with the whip hidden behind your back. Walter's laugh was soft at first, then sharp, jagged. He drained his glass, refilled it from the bottle. The bees hummed louder, almost in rhythm with his heartbeat. I make a few promises, he said, tapping the polished wood with his finger. A speech, a smile, a little staged outrage, and the whole city bends, every damn one of them. His friend shook his head, still grinning. And they won't know it's all a game, not until it's too late. Walter leaned back, face tilted toward the ceiling. That's the beauty, they think they choose. But they don't, they never did. They laughed dark, cruel laughter. The bees stirred in agreement, crawling over Walter's arms, legs, the glass he held part armor, part crown. Back at the mansion, Jessica rolled over in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Shadows from the chandelier danced across the walls. She could still hear the echoes of their argument, Zach's voice hard and uncompromising. Zach lay in the library, staring at a book he couldn't read, mind spinning. Justice or murder? God or man? Are we already gods? Neither noticed the quiet staff moving around them, silent witnesses to the tension, accustomed to arguing children, accustomed to watching power simmer and bubble until it boiled over. And above the city, somewhere deep in the darkness, Walter and his friend plotted, laughed, and poured whiskey, their power stretching over streets, votes, and unsuspecting hearts like a living shadow. The city slept, or pretended to. But in a week, it would make its choice. Chapter 8, Chasing Shadows. Kane didn't go home that night. He drove in circles, cigarette after cigarette, replaying the alley scene in his head. The blue glow, the speed, the precision, the argument he'd overheard, justice versus murder, whispered like kids who knew they were crossing a line they couldn't uncross. By 4 a.m., he was parked outside the Blackwood estate gates. He knew the name, everyone in the city did. Old money, defense contracts, whispers of black budget projects. the kind of place that didn't have visitors unless they were expected. He flashed his badge at the security post anyway. The guard looked at the shield, then at Kane's bloodshot eyes and 3-day stubble. "They're not receiving," the guard said. "I'm not asking," Kane replied. "Tell Miss Hale and Mr. Hale that Detective Elias Kane needs to speak with them about an incident in the downtown alleys. Tell them I saw the blue light. Tell them I heard the conversation." The guard hesitated, then spoke into his radio. 5 minutes later, the gates opened. The mansion was even more oppressive up close, marble and glass and silence. A butler led him through halls that smelled of lemon polish and old money. Kane felt every step like he was walking into a trap. Jessica and Zach waited in the library. She stood by the fireplace. He leaned against a bookshelf, arms crossed. Both looked exhausted, like people who hadn't slept in days. "You," Jessica said, "the cop from the alley." Kane nodded. "You saw me." "We felt someone watching," Zach said. "Didn't know it was you until now." Kane pulled out his notebook. "I saw you kill a man, I saw you save a kid, I want to know why." Jessica crossed her arms. "And if we said nothing?" "Then you'd be lying," Kane said, "and I don't like liars." Zach studied him. "You're not here to arrest us." "Not yet," Kane admitted. "I'm here because this city is rotting faster than I can keep up. And you too, you're the only ones doing anything about it." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "You support Walter Dorn." "I did," Kane said. "Until I saw what he's really building. Until I saw bees kill people on live TV and the chief of police kneel like a penitent. Until I realized the man promising order is the one creating the chaos he claims to fix." Silence. Then Zach asked the question that mattered. "What do you want?" Kane looked at them, really looked. 2 kids in over their heads, wearing armor that could level city blocks, still trying to hold onto something like morality. "I want in," he said. "Not as a cop, not as a snitch, as someone who's seen the rot and can't unseen it. I can give you scanners, real-time feeds, guidance. I can keep you one step ahead." Jessica glanced at Zach. Zach nodded once. "One condition," Jessica said. "No more coke in this house. You want to help us. You stay clean while we're out there." Kane stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out the small baggie, and dropped it on the table. "Done," he said. He crushed the bag under his boot. Jessica exhaled. "Welcome to the team," she said. Chapter 9, Scanners and Shadows. Kane moved into the mansion the next day. No ceremony, just a duffel bag and a laptop. He set up in the old control room beneath the house. Screens, scanners, police band receivers, body cam feeds patched directly into the suits. He taught them how to listen, how to anticipate, how to vanish before the first siren. He never went into the field. That was the deal. Jessica and Zach did the bleeding. Kane did the seeing. Their first coordinated operation was small, a warehouse where cultists were stockpiling yellow armbands and weapons for distribution. Kane guided them through back alleys, warned them of patrols, watched through their cam as they moved like ghosts. Jessica disarmed 3 men without killing. Zach restrained 4. No deaths. For once. Back at the mansion, Kane leaned back in his chair, exhausted but clear-eyed. "You're getting better," he said. Jessica pulled her helmet off. "We're getting colder." "That's the job," Kane replied. Walter's next spectacle was worse. Chapter 10, The broadcast. The television in the control room glowed. Walter stood on the steps of City Hall. No crowd this time, just cameras, just him. He held a Bible in one hand. "For generations," he said, voice soft but carrying, "you have bowed to words, to laws written by men who feared strength, but they failed you, they left you weak, helpless, forgotten." Jessica's stomach churned. Walter raised the Bible higher. "We do not need this." He dropped it. The book hit the marble with a crack that echoed through every speaker in the city. "We have me," Walter said. "I am your law, I am your order, I am your savior." The cameras stayed on. Then the buzzing began. At the edges of the square, people tried to leave, a handful at first, a man pulling his daughter's hand, a woman shaking her head. The swarm descended. Living walls of bees. Screams tore through the broadcast, People clawed at their faces, their necks. Bodies fell. The camera didn't cut away. Walter's voice returned, calm as prayer. "Behold," he said, "what happens when you reject order." The chief of police stepped forward, helmet off, head bowed. "The law stands with me," Walter declared, "and so does the city." No arrests. No sirens. The broadcast continued. Jessica covered her mouth. Kane went rigid. Zach stared at the screen, fists clenched. "They're accepting it," Jessica whispered. "They're just accepting it." Zach's voice was low, because he proved something, that he decides who lives, and no one will stop him. Kane finally spoke, voice hollow. "That wasn't a speech, that was a declaration of godhood." Walter smiled into the camera, bees settling around him like a crown. "Go home," he said warmly. "Rejoice. Tomorrow the city begins anew." The feed ended. Silence filled the room. Jessica stood slowly. That wasn't politics. Zach nodded. That was mass murder. Kane wiped his mouth. And it didn't matter because the law bowed, the cameras stayed on, and the city cheered. He looked at them, not as suspects, not as vigilantes, but as the only people who had seen the truth the moment it revealed itself. "I'm in," he said quietly. "Whatever you're doing, I'm in." The TV screen went black. Outside the mansion, the city celebrated its new god. Chapter 11, the devoted Walter's cult didn't need masks anymore. Yellow armbands became mandatory. Markets refused service without them. Work sites turned away anyone bare-wristed. Resist bees. The dome began construction the next week. Thousands of volunteers, cultists under threat and zealotry, worked day and night. Cranes lifted transparent reinforced panels. Drones guided them into place. Each section locked with a dull, resonant thud that echoed across the city. Walter spoke to the governor on a secure line. "Send your troops," he said. "They'll find nothing." The governor's voice cracked. "You're trapping millions of people in a cage." "I'm protecting them," Walter replied. "From outsiders, from chaos, from themselves." The line went dead. Jessica, Zach, and Kane watched the construction feeds from the mansion. "They're building a prison," Jessica said. "No," Kane corrected. "A terrarium. He wants to watch what grows inside." Street battles became nightly. Jessica begged Zach not to kill. He did anyway. The dome crept higher. Chapter 12, Weeks of Glass and Blood 3 weeks. The dome was half complete. Every night the cult pushed harder. Roadblocks, curfews, forced kneeling in public squares. People dragged from homes for refusing the armband. Every night the suits answered. Jessica and Zach became ghosts, appearing in riots, smashing through patrols, ripping weapons from hands. Kane guided them relentlessly from the control room. "Two squads approaching from the south, non-lethal if you can," he said. Jessica dropped into a crowd, energy shield flaring as stones and bottles bounced off her armor. She moved fast, precise, disarming, stunning, pulling civilians out of reach. "Zach," she shouted over comms, "don't." The cultist went down hard anyway, skull cracking against concrete. Jessica landed beside him, breathing heavy. "You killed him." "He was going to torch the building," Zach snapped, "with people inside." "I don't care," she said. "We said no killing." Zach's voice lowered. "That rule's getting people hurt." They didn't finish the argument. Sirens, fake ones, cult-controlled, forced them to withdraw. Back at the mansion, the silence afterward was worse. The dome kept rising. Walter spoke daily now, framed by construction like a prophet before a rising temple. "Each panel," he said warmly on one broadcast, "is a promise. Safety, purity, control." Kane shut the screen off. "Once it's sealed, that's it. No satellites, no air support, no guard." Jessica sat heavily. "Then we stop it before it closes." Zach stared at the map, at the near-complete ring encircling Crescent City. "Even if we stop the dome," he said finally, "he'll keep going. The cult won't disappear. The police won't suddenly grow a spine." Jessica looked at him. "What are you saying?" Zach met her eyes. "This ends one way." Kane said it before she could. "Walter." Jessica shook her head. "No, we don't assassinate people." "He's not a politician anymore," Zach said. He's a god king with a private army and a kill switch on the city. That doesn't make us executioners. Zach's voice cracked just slightly. If that dome seals, no one gets in, no one gets out. He controls food, power, water, airspace. That's not tyranny, that's total control. Silence stretched. Kane leaned back. You don't have to decide tonight, but you're running out of time. Jessica stood pacing. We stop the cult, we expose him. And if none of that works, Zach asked quietly. Jessica stopped. Her voice was barely above a whisper, and we stop him. The agreement wasn't spoken. It didn't need to be. Outside, cranes lifted another panel into place. The dome grew taller. And the city, slowly and willingly, disappeared behind glass. Chapter 13, sealed. The final panel locked into place at 3:17 p.m. on March 2, 2026. A dull, resonant thud rolled across the city like the closing of a coffin lid. The dome was complete. Outside, National Guard convoys circled uselessly. Helicopters hovered, rotors beating against an invisible ceiling. Satellites stared down at a perfect, reflective bubble. Radio signals bounced, drones crashed. Inside, Walter stood beneath the center of the dome, arms spread, bees crawling over him like living regalia. My people, he said into every speaker, every screen, every radio that still worked, we are safe. The camera lingered on his face, calm, paternal, certain. My father would be proud, he added softly, almost to himself. The broadcast ended. In the mansion, silence. Kane broke it first. That's it, no backup, no cavalry, no rescue. Jessica's voice was steady. Then it's just us. Zach nodded, us and him. They no longer left the mansion without suits. Deliveries came by drone, food, medical supplies, spare parts for the armor. No human faces. No conversations. The city had become a cage. And they were the only ones still trying to break the bars from the inside. Chapter 14, the line that breaks Walter's next decree came at dawn. Every screen in the city snapped to life. He stood in a simple white shirt, bees resting calmly on his shoulders. My people, he said gently, yesterday we sealed ourselves from chaos. Jessica felt sick already. Today we begin purification. A graphic appeared, a yellow wristband. This mark is not oppression, Walter said, holding up his own arm. It is unity. With it you may buy food, medicine, fuel, work. The pause was deliberate. Without it, you reject the city. The broadcast cut to footage of markets, armed enforcers. Families turned away. An elderly man collapsed at a checkpoint, clutching a bare wrist. Bees descended. He stopped moving. Jessica whispered, no. Walter's voice returned. Those without the band will not participate in commerce. They will not trade. They will not take from a city they refuse to believe in. The screen showed a woman running with a child. Bees followed, screams, stillness. And if they attempt to undermine this unity, if they resist purification, then the bees will do what bees have always done. Compliance, Walter concluded, is mercy. The feed ended. No one spoke. Kane broke the silence, voice hollow. That's famine, that's execution by starvation. Jessica stared at the dark screen. They won't survive a week. The elderly, the sick, kids. Zach didn't say I told you so. He just waited. Jessica's hands trembled. She clenched them, then unclenched them, testing whether they still belonged to her. He's not ruling, she said slowly. He's selecting who deserves to live. She looked at Zach. If we let this continue, we're choosing too. Zach nodded once. I don't want to kill him, I want this to stop. Jessica swallowed hard. Then she straightened. He must die. The words felt heavy, permanent. Kane closed his eyes, exhaling. Once you cross that line, the city won't forgive you. Jessica's voice was steady now. The city already chose him, someone has to choose against him. Zach activated the suit rack, power hummed to life. Then we plan it, he said. No spectacle, no martyrdom, clean, final. Jessica nodded, tears in her eyes, jaw set. Not because we want to, she said. But because if we don't, there won't be a city left to save. Outside, the dome glowed softly in the daylight. A perfect prison. And for the first time since it rose, Someone inside it had decided it would fall. Chapter 15. The Sting of God. Walter declared the suit's demons on live TV the next morning. "My people," he said, face solemn, "you have seen them." Footage looped behind him. Slow-motion shots of Jessica and Zach fighting, distorted angles, bees swarming, bodies falling. "They wear armor stolen from gods," Walter continued. "They spread chaos. They defy order. They are demons sent to test our faith." The crowd murmured. Fear replaced awe. "They oppose my will," Walter said softly, "and therefore they oppose you." The chief of police stepped forward. "These individuals are now enemies of the city," the chief announced. "They are to be reported, pursued, and destroyed on sight." Walter raised a hand. "To protect my people," he said, "I will personally correct this heresy." He lifted one foot. The boots gleamed, black, angular, veins of energy pulsing. "I will not lose another block," he said. The broadcast cut. Deep beneath City Hall, Walter paced. "They took another district," the engineer said. "If this continues—" "I won't let it," Walter said. He stepped into the sealed chamber. The boots waited on a pedestal. Vertical propulsion, impact amplification, kinetic discharge on contact. The engineer hesitated. "If you engage them directly, I will remind them who owns this city," Walter finished. Bees crawled up his legs as the boots locked on with a hiss of pressure and light. He stomped once. The concrete cracked. Chapter 16. The public humiliation. The riot was already burning when Jessica and Zach arrived. Cult enforcers scattered as they landed. Civilians ran, fires flickered. They moved in practiced rhythm. Disarm, disable, advance. "We're pushing them back," Jessica said. "This block's breaking." Then the air changed. The crowd parted, not in fear but reverence. People dropped to their knees. Heads bowed. A sound echoed above, a deep, resonant boom. Zach looked up. "Jessica," Walter descended from the sky like judgment. The boots slammed into the pavement, cracking concrete outward in a perfect circle. Bees poured around him in a living storm, cloaking his body, his face half hidden behind the writhing mass. He raised his arms. "My city," Walter proclaimed, voice carrying effortlessly, "step aside." No one hesitated. The street emptied. Walter's gaze locked onto the two figures still standing. "You wear stolen fire," he said. "You sow doubt, you disrupt my will." Jessica's voice trembled. "You're starving people, you're killing them." Walter laughed softly. "I am saving them." He spread his arms wider, bees forming a crown around his head. "This is no longer a crusade," he declared. "This is a correction." His eyes burned. "Two against one," Walter said calmly. "Let the city witness its God." He moved first. The impact was devastating. One kick sent Zach skidding through a storefront, alarms screaming. Jessica struck back with a full-energy blast, but Walter walked through it, boots discharging kinetic force that shattered the pavement beneath her feet. "You see," Walter said as he advanced, "your power is borrowed, mine is ordained." Jessica barely rolled aside as his heel cratered the street where her head had been. "Kane," Zach shouted, "we can't win this." "I know," Kane said, voice tight. "Get out now." Walter caught Zach midair, slamming him into the ground with a force that rattled the entire block. Bees swarmed, stinging at joints, seams, weaknesses. Jessica pulled Zach free with everything she had. Walter didn't pursue. He simply stood there, watching them retreat. "Run," he called after them, voice echoing with divine certainty. "The city will watch you fall eventually." Back at the mansion, the doors sealed behind them. Both suits were damaged, cracked plating, flickering systems. Jessica ripped her helmet off, gasping, "He's not human anymore." Zach stared at the floor. "He wanted us to lose, publicly." Kane's hands shook as he replayed the footage. "He didn't just fight you." "He preached," Jessica said quietly. Outside, the city roared with devotion. And for the first time, the heroes understood the truth. Walter Dorn wasn't hiding behind godhood anymore. He was wearing it. Chapter 17. Doubt and powder. The argument started quietly. That made it worse. "You're talking about assassination," Jessica said, arms folded, voice low but shaking. Say the word, don't dress it up. Zach didn't look at her. He stood at the map wall, city grids glowing red where cult patrols had been reported overnight. I am saying we end this, he replied. One man, one target, before the city suffocates. That's murder, Jessica snapped. Planned, cold, no immediate threat. Zach turned then, eyes hard. There is no immediate threat because he already won. The threat is constant now. Kane sat back in his chair, silent, watching them like a referee who knew the fight couldn't be stopped. Jessica shook her head. We're not executioners, we said we wouldn't become that. We already crossed that line, Zach shot back. You just don't want to admit it. That was survival, she said. This is ideology. Zach gestured at the screens, riot footage, kneeling crowds, masked enforcers. That's ideology too, and it's killing people slower but in bigger numbers. Jessica's voice cracked. If we do this, there's no coming back, no justification, no moral high ground. Zach softened, just for a moment. What good is the high ground if everyone underneath it is dying? Silence swallowed the room. Then Kane's voice cut through, low and rough. You're both right, and you're both wrong. They looked at him. He stood, walked to the table, and flipped over the small silver plate he'd kept hidden. Powder scattered across the wood like ash. I've been listening to you two tear each other apart for weeks, he said. And I've been sitting here getting high so I don't have to feel how bad it's gotten. Jessica stared at the powder. Kane, no, he said. You're right, I'm killing myself, and I'm making it worse for you. I thought I needed it to stay sharp, to see patterns, to survive. He looked at Zach. You're right too, we can't keep pretending we can win this clean. He looked at Jessica. But you're also right. Once we decide to kill him, we're not the good guys anymore. We're just the other side with better weapons. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the last baggie, and crushed it in his fist. Powder fell between his fingers. I quit, he said. Right now, for good, no more shortcuts, no more excuses. Jessica's eyes filled. You mean that? I do, Kane said. Because if we're going to end this, we do it sober, we do it smart, and we do it together. Zach exhaled slowly. Jessica nodded. The three of them stood in silence. Then Zach spoke. Then we plan it. Kane pulled up the schematics. Straight to City Hall, no more games. Jessica's voice was steady. We overload the kinetic field, force him to move, drain it, then we finish it. Kane looked at them. Once we start this, he said, there's no going back. Jessica met his eyes. We already passed that point, she said. The dome glowed outside. And inside, 3 people who had once tried to save the city now, prepared to kill its god. Chapter 18, The Enemy of God. The broadcast came without warning. Every screen in Crescent City, every billboard, every phone, every cracked television in every apartment, snapped to black, then to Walter. He stood alone in the center of City Hall's rotunda. No crowd, no banners, just him, the dome arching above like a false sky, bees resting calmly on his shoulders. My people, he said, voice soft but carrying to every corner of the sealed city. There comes a moment when God must name his enemies. The word God landed like a fist. Jessica felt the air leave her lungs. Everything beyond this dome, Walter continued, has rejected us. They threaten us. They whisper of invasion, of correction, of removing what they do not understand. He leaned closer to the camera. They are not neighbors, not allies. His eyes hardened. They are enemies of God. A low murmur rippled through the unseen city. Fear, awe, resignation. Walter straightened. And so, I must prepare you for what comes next. Kane whispered, no, don't. I call upon every mind within the city, Walter said, voice rising. Every scientist, every engineer, every chemist, every thinker who understands power and consequence. Jessica's breath caught. You will come forward, Walter commanded. You will contribute your knowledge to the ultimate safeguard of our faith. The word hung there poisonous. A weapon, Walter said calmly. That ensures no army, no nation, no godless authority will ever dare challenge this city again. Zach felt cold spread through his chest. Kane stared at the screen, horrified. He's not bluffing, he's declaring intent. Walter's expression softened, almost paternal. "This is not destruction," he said gently. "This is deterrence. This is love sharpened into permanence." Jessica shook her head, whispering, "He's crossed it, completely." Walter raised his arms. "Refuse," he said, "and you refuse God himself." Bees swarmed behind him, thick and black, forming a living halo. "Obey," Walter concluded, "and you will be remembered as the generation that ensured eternity." The broadcast ended. The mansion was silent. Not stunned, not shocked. Resolved. Cain broke it first. That's the point of no return. Jessica's voice was steady, terrifyingly calm. "He's not trying to rule the city anymore." Zach nodded. "He's trying to hold the world hostage." Cain looked at the map, at City Hall glowing red in the center. If he even starts this, if he convinces enough people, there's no undoing it. Jessica activated her wristband. The suit responded instantly. "We don't stop the cult tomorrow," she said. Zach's suit hummed to life beside hers. "We don't stop the dome," he added. Cain looked up at them, eyes clear for the first time since they'd met. "We stop him." Outside, the dome gleamed brighter than ever, a city-sized lie reflecting itself endlessly. And somewhere within it, a man who called himself God had just given the world a reason to fear him, and the heroes a reason they could no longer survive without ending him. The final battle was no longer coming. It had already begun. Chapter 19. When God's Fall City Hall was bleeding long before they arrived. Windows shattered, marble scorched. Smoke curled through the halls like black veins. The dome above filtered moonlight into something pale and unreal, as if the city were being observed through glass in a morgue. Jessica's suit sparked as she landed on the steps. One stabilizer failed outright. Warning icons flashed red across her HUD. "Cain," she said, breathless, "systems degrading." "I know," Cain replied from the mansion. "You're running on reserves, both of you. This has to end now." Zach's armor was worse, one gauntlet shattered, circuitry exposed. Blood streaked his face inside the cracked visor. He breathed through gritted teeth. Walter waited in the grand rotunda. No guards. No cultists. Just him. He stood at the center, boots humming softly, bees crawling over his shoulders and chest like ceremonial armor. The kinetic field shimmered faintly around him, subtle, almost invisible, but present. "You came," Walter said pleasantly. "Good, I hate unfinished sermons." Zach stepped forward. "You've tortured this city long enough." Walter smiled. "Tortured? No, I have guided, protected, shown what obedience looks like, and yet, you defy me." Jessica activated her wristband. Energy crackled, but she hesitated. "Zach," she whispered, "remember the plan, don't." "I know," he said, "we don't hit him." Walter laughed. "Wise, every blow you strike becomes mine." The fight erupted without another word. Jessica tried to restrain, to grapple, to redirect, using non-impact force, energy tethers, anything that wouldn't feed the field. Walter walked through it. The kinetic bubble converted pressure into propulsion, throwing her back like a rag doll. She hit a column hard, plating buckled, ribs screamed. Zach adapted faster. He didn't punch. He moved Walter. He grabbed, locked joints, forced steps, dragging him across the marble, making him spend the field with every resisted movement. Every forced step drained it. Every redirected force bled energy into the boots. Walter noticed. His smile faded. "You think you're clever," he snarled. He stomped. The shockwave tore through the rotunda. Zach's suit buckled. One arm went dead. Jessica barely raised a shield in time, her visor shattered. They were losing. Cain's voice cut through the chaos. "Zach, field's destabilizing, but so are your suits. You don't have much time." Walter advanced, boots glowing brighter now, energy venting erratically. "I gave them order," he shouted. "I gave them purpose. You would throw that away for chaos." Zach planted himself in front of Jessica. "No," he said. "We throw it away because it was built on fear." Walter lunged. Zach didn't strike. He let himself be hit. The kinetic field surged, too much, too fast, feeding on itself. Walter stumbled for the first time, balance off, boots screaming as they tried to compensate. Zach wrapped him up and slammed him into the floor, not with force but with weight. The field flickered violently. Jessica fired everything she had left into the overload point. Walter's boots exploded in sparks and molten metal. The kinetic halo collapsed. Walter gasped, disoriented, eyes unfocused. Zach's fists came down. Once. Twice. Again. Walter's face caved, cheekbones shattering, nose pulped, teeth scattering across marble like broken pearls. Blood sprayed in arcs. The final blow landed with a wet, final crunch. Walter's skull deformed. Brains and bone mixed with blood in a grotesque smear. The bees froze midair. Then fell. Thousands of tiny bodies rained down, lifeless like black snow. The dome lights flickered and died. Sirens wailed close. Zach looked at Jessica, blood dripped from his gauntlets. Go, he said, now. I'm not, they'll take us both. You're the only one who can still move, protect the evidence, protect Kane, tell the truth when it matters. She shook her head, tears cutting tracks through grime. He pressed his cracked wristband into her hand. Go home, he whispered. She ran. Police flooded the rotunda moments later. They found Zach on his knees, suit shattered, hands raised. They cuffed him without a word. Epilogue light through broken glass. The dome came down at dawn 3 days later. It didn't shatter all at once, no explosion, no miracle, but peeled away in sections, like a scab finally ready to fall off. Federal crews worked in silence, cutting, dismantling, lowering glowing panels piece by piece until sunlight touched the streets again. Real sunlight. People stood in doorways and on rooftops, shielding their eyes like they'd forgotten what morning felt like. Jessica watched most of it from the mansion balcony. She hadn't worn the suit in weeks. Kane stepped outside with 2 mugs of coffee. He looked healthier, thinner, clearer, no tremor in his hands anymore. 1 sugar, he said, handing her a cup. I remembered. She smiled faintly. You're learning. They leaned against the railing, listening to the distant grind of machinery and the low murmur of a city relearning noise. They're saying it'll take years, Kane said. Trials, reforms, new elections. Half the cops won't keep their badges. Good, Jessica replied. They shouldn't. Kane nodded. Then, quieter, they also say Zach's testimony cracked things wide open. Jessica's grip tightened on the mug. He holding up. As well as someone can, Kane said. He didn't run, didn't deny anything. Jury saw that. They call him the boy who stopped the god. She exhaled slowly. That's not what he wanted. No, Kane agreed, but it's what the city needed. They stood in silence for a moment. The air smelled cleaner without the bees. I still hear him sometimes, Jessica admitted. Walter, his voice, like he's waiting to be believed again. Kane looked at her. That's the thing about gods, they only exist if people let them. She nodded, then we just don't. Below them, workers cheered as the final dome segment was lowered onto a flatbed. Someone clapped. Someone else cried. Life moved forward in small, human ways. Jessica glanced back toward the mansion, past the hidden elevator, the sealed armory, the silent suits resting in their racks. We're done, right? She asked. Kane smiled, not a sad one, a real one. Yeah, he said, for once, I think we are. The sun kept rising, indifferent and clean. And somewhere beneath the city, in a concrete box with a narrow window, a boy who once punched a god in the face waited for the only person who still believed he was human. The dome was gone. The nightmare was over. But the scars on the city, on the people, on the 2 who ended it, would last longer than glass ever could. And that, perhaps, was the closest thing to justice they were ever going to get. The end.